what HARPERS actually is. We'll have a run through the goals and objectives, the structure of the project, just to kind of give you some context and flavour as to the background and technical presentations that you'll receive, and then most importantly kind of indicate where you can find the documentation that's been produced, because obviously there's been some really good stuff that we've found, and we can only show you a certain amount in these slides. So HARPERS itself, EU funded project. It's 3 years in duration, coming to a close in a couple of months' time. Just over 2 million euros worth of funding received under a Eurasian, and there's 26 partners that's involved in it. And really, it's looking at trying to harmonise the application of international regulatory framework in the management, waste management and decommissioning activities. What does that actually mean? Really it's about the goals of the project is to establish if there are specific benefits for aligning methodologies and decommissioning within road waste management, and then look at whether there are specific obstacles that are put in our path when it comes to regulatory approaches, whether it comes to industry practice, in order then for us to improve the way that we can deliver as an industry to make sure that decommissioning projects run quicker, that waste is treated as opposed to just being left, and that we use the best techniques and methodologies, and understand if there's good things that are done, and understand that if there are challenging things that are put in front of us. So, as we all are aware, there are different national regulations amongst member states, and particularly internationally, in decommissioning road waste management. And sometimes it's challenging to have new technologies that are brought to the market, different stakeholder views. We've always done it this way. And sometimes legislation, rules and regulations get in the way in certain member states or in certain countries. There's the driver for this being that storage is expensive, and we need to make sure that repositories are used sufficiently. And probably most importantly, really in a way, is that whilst we decommission facilities safely and we look after waste safely, then engaging with the public and making sure the public perception of nuclear is strong, and that we make sure that we address any environmental and sustainability related issues. So the structure of the project itself, we try to make this a little bit simple, but effectively there's 7 work packages. So WP work package number 1 is project management. So I guess I could draw a big circle around what's on the screen at the moment. Work package 2 is helping us with the structure of the project itself. So identifying and mapping stakeholders, undertaking some of the survey work that we've done, looking at the consolidation of the results of the different work packages. And then there's 3 technical work packages. Work package 3, ours, cross-border services and facilities. Work package 4, circular economy. Work package 5, advanced technologies. And as I say, there's separate training sessions on work package 4 and 5 in the coming months' time. But all of work package 3, 4 and 5 have common threads that run through them. So there are needs that were identified within the proposal that we submitted to Euratom, and then they've been developed further. So more needs and opportunities and challenges that have been defined. Then they're then refined using a particular process, and stakeholders are engaged in that. We're then looking at the regulatory impact of specific topics that we'll come on to, and produce business cases. So looking at case for change. If we did this, what would the benefit be later on to us all? And then underpinning all of these things is work relating to regulations themselves. And then there's work package 7, which is the dissemination work package as well. But effectively, it leads us to a series of papers at the end of it. So position paper, business case, and regulatory implication, regulatory impact projects. And these are summaries as to what we need to do, what the benefits are of doing that, and it gives us a really good justification back to the Commission as to what we can do to improve waste management, particularly within Work Package 3 to treat waste across borders. Okay, so stakeholders have been used quite extensively across the project. We've used the Work Package 2, 3, 4 and 5 teams to kind of identify who those stakeholders are and make sure that they are engaged suitably. It's been interesting to try and find out who the stakeholders are across the different member states. And make sure that we engage them at the right sort of level for them, whether that's one-to-one engagement, whether that's broader forums, whether that's personal views or official views that they've given in relation to the information we've sent them. We then, part of what we've done is defined a list of topics. So that's working through what was in the proposal originally, added more to once the project had started. Then that's led to a series of workshops and online sessions, which then has allowed us to analyse the results, kind of see who's interested in carrying particular topics forward. And then these topics have been prioritised and moved into what we've called phase 2, which is the implementation side of things. That's roughly the structure of what HARPERS is. Work Package 3, so the cross-border side of things, is all about identifying the needs and opportunities that are related to cross-border waste treatment services and facilities. We've assessed regulatory obstacles that are in the way in conjunction with Work Package 6, and we've really looked at how we can advance waste treatment across borders within Europe particularly, and to ensure that waste is treated or accelerated in its treatment. We've looked at why it's treated, why it's not treated. We've looked at if there are opportunities to improve what we do across Europe. Okay, bit more technical structure, I guess, to the project, but these are quite important, I think, for further information that you'd have for the future. As with all projects, the kind of deliverables and milestones have been outlined, but really the tasks at the start of the project have been to look at what the challenges and needs are in relation to cross-border treatment of wastes within Europe, and see why it's important, why it's not important, and what things that we need to do to improve or to fix particular challenges that are there. So the prioritisation of topics is the topics are identified and then they've been prioritised, and that list has then been refined. The deliverables, there's I think it was 19 topics that were taken forward through the prioritisation process, which is then where we engage with stakeholders, and we've asked people then to contribute into what they can do to try and solve some of those challenges that we've identified. This has all taken over a few years, as you've seen, which then has led to selection criteria being defined for the topics to see what's important to us and the stakeholders for dealing with those needs and issues that we've identified. And then ultimately, out the back of the project, we've identified 3 topics, which we've kindly called 3.2A, B and C. I'll come into those in a moment. And then we've looked at the specific legislation issues and regulatory impact issues of those topics. And we'll have a couple of slides later on the business case. So that's really the case for change. And looking at using a TCOP process, which is actually a project management process, to identify technical or commercial or political risks that are associated with those specific topics. This has then led to deliverables, a position paper, and various milestone documents, which have got a lot of detail in, and also lots of opportunity for further projects in the future, particularly within the business case reports. There are a number of activities that we've highlighted to kind of say this should be done. These are recommendations that go forward, but obviously the project is limited in time, so I'd urge you to have a look at those, and they're all available on the website. I guess a different way of kind of representing the structure of this phase 1 and phase 2 of Harpers. So the open call that you get to see at the top left hand corner, the 19-20 topics that we had under work package 3, these were prioritised, and then people were encouraged to kind of respond to with areas of support and interest, to kind of see which organisations want to work in which topics, which has then helped us to refine down interest, not only across the project from stakeholders as well. And then as we've progressed over the last year or so, then we've engaged with stakeholders, we've developed questionnaires and surveys, and then that's led to the regulatory impact documents, the business case to be documents, and then the summary position papers themselves. One of the things that we have done is we actually produced memos for the 3 separate tasks that we'll talk about in a few seconds. And these have sufficient detail and justification, which is then fed into the regulatory implications document, and also the business case reports. They've been quite challenging to put together, because the 3 topics you'll get to see in a minute have been quite different in structure and approach, but they're quite interesting reading. So the 3 topics under work package 3. 3.2a, as you can read, to align wastes with treatment technologies in a manner acceptable to all stakeholders, led by Studsvik, and Studsvik in Sweden, and supported by our colleagues here that are mostly on the call right now. 3.2b, harmonisation of individual EU and international countries' problematic waste inventory. It's quite a mouthful for this time of the morning, and Javis have led that one admirably. And 3.2c, member states' approach dealing with radioactive, contaminated, hazardous waste differs. And there's been a really interesting debate regarding the treatment of hazardous waste, and then once you make it radioactive as well, where that sits within the regulations. And Golson Sciences, based in the UK, had led that work. All of them have produced this memo. All of them have undertaken questionnaires, and they've got case studies that have been identified within the reports as well, so you'll get to see. So 3.2a really is looking at a common understanding of the suitability of treatment options for different waste types, to see whether we can actually set up new treatment facilities, whether we can change the processes, whether we can improve what we can do from a waste treatment point of view across different boundaries in Europe. This way, we've been able to then identify what works, what doesn't work, and what's then helpful information for decision makers to see what we can do to change things for the future. We recognise within this task, but all the tasks, that stakeholders might have different views as to what's important to them, whether that's their organisation, their country, their person. Then we've taken that on board and have been as sensitive to deal with that. But really, this is looking about what is treated, where, why it's treated, where, why it's not treated in a particular country, and then we look to see what can be improved. In order to do this, we set we justified some of the work through case studies that are on ongoing projects. So for metal treatment, which I guess started at Studsvik many years ago and continued with Cyclife to date. Eckert and Ziegler with movement and treatment of sealed sources around Europe, and then waste-led decommissioning of the MacLab facility, which was a really great project to kind of show how stakeholders need to be engaged and managed throughout the process. That's quite a big part of, I guess, all projects really in a way, but specifically ones where you've got different stakeholders in different countries which will have different needs and different requirements, and understanding those as quickly as possible is the best thing for us to do. So we set a lot of questionnaires up, and for 3.2a, it's looking at tangible and intangible benefits. Hard sort of views, legislation says that you can't do this or you can do this, versus some of the intangible things of, well, we've always done it this way because that's what we're used to. So that's been quite interesting to look at. And really then the focus is looking at why wastes are treated or why wastes are not specifically treated. And that's where the questionnaires have come in. I'm not going to go through all the questions now. This is just a very quick sample, but effectively it's identifying what wastes need to be treated in your country. If you've got a specific waste, so we asked waste owners to identify what that waste was, whether it's a resin or an organic or a metallic element, and say, okay, well, have you got treatments available? Yes or no. If you have, then do you use them? If you haven't, why do you not use them? If they're available somewhere else, would you want to use them if they're there? To try and really understand the drivers behind decision making within certain waste owners, within certain member states, within any country that's got waste that needs to be treated. So we define it against specific waste forms themselves in order to help us to see if there's a pattern across these things, which is why the case studies have been quite important to us to look at. 3.2b, so harmonisation of individual EU and international countries' problematic waste inventory. This has been a great one. So this is looking at collaboration between organisations and other bodies to kind of see if there are opportunities for us to have a unified problematic waste definition, because there isn't on a lot of occasions. So part of it's about understanding which waste forms should be or are classed as problematic within member states, through understanding what each member state defines as problematic, and then look at whether there are classification systems that could be improved in order to harmonise that definition. So out the back of that, it's kind of asking the question, can we identify cases for change in order then to treat problematic wastes, whether that's sending a problematic waste from one country to another because another country's got a treatment facility that's available to treat it. So again, a series of sample questions a series of questionnaires were issued, and then these are sample questions that relate to 3.2b. So have you got a definition for problematic waste? What's your individual, either personal or member state's view as to why it's problematic? And then looking at the waste classification systems. So the specific features of each member state's classification system has been quite interesting to look at, to see which ones support the treatment of problematic wastes, which ones don't, and the reasons behind that, which we'll come on to in the presentations a little bit later on. And then finally, last but not least, 3.2c is looking at member states' management of radioactive waste that's also hazardous in nature. So led by Goldsons, and this is looking at the barriers that are associated with those that I kind of say distinct types of waste, really, in a way. There's been a focus around asbestos, mercury, and lead for these tasks, and really it's about understanding whether member states treat it as a hazardous waste or a radioactive waste first, and how that legislation works, and then whether there are things we can do to kind of improve that across Europe. So again, questionnaires were raised, and then specific questions raised for mercury, asbestos, and lead. So whether that's how it's defined as a hazardous waste, or whether there's a comparison to other waste treatments in order to make it acceptable for treatment, and then ultimately looking at whether it's feasible to have cross-border services to improve that, because a lot of waste owners may only have small volumes across Europe. So therefore, it's not necessarily cost effective to have your own treatment facility, but therefore you might be able to send it abroad for treatment and then receive the waste back after treatment. The output of work package 3 is these kind of two main documents: the regulatory impacts document and the business case. So Javis have led the regulatory impacts, so that's taken all of the regulatory and legislation views, comments, inputs, evidence that's been identified in tasks 3.2 A, B, and C, and then kind of pull that together to see if there are common themes across this work package 3, which then builds up into this regulatory impacts document. Business case one's a little bit different. Arne will talk about that in a few moments, but really this is looking at cases for change. So if we did this change, then this is the positive impact that we can get from that. And it's a series of recommendations at the back of the document, which I urge you to have a look at, to kind of see the magnitude of the change that we can have if we make sometimes some simple, sometimes some complicated changes in order to improve the way that we manage waste and decommissioning wastes from it all. I think Arne will talk about this a little bit, but it uses the TCOP process. So it's a risk analysis framework, project management tool, really, but it identifies potential changes from technical, environmental, commercial, operational, and political aspects. Just really trying to challenge us to think about what it is that we are doing. Those have been consolidated down to the deliverables level to 6.1 and 2.4 to kind of give an overall flavour of the project based on work package 3, work package 4, and work package 5. And it's kind of interesting how it's all pulled together, and to try and give you a flavour of Harpers in 20-25 minutes of what we've done over the last 3 years has been difficult in a timescale, but hopefully you get to see we've done some interesting stuff, and I would urge you to go to the website and have a look at the documents that we've got, the deliverables and milestone reports, because there's a lot more information in those. And I think Arne's going to gently jump in now and talk a little bit about the business case.
Thank you, David. Do you hear me well?
Yes, yeah.
Next slide, please. The process for the business case was to firstly to make a description of the current situation, then based upon the current situation, make an analysis, technical, environmental, regulatory, commercial, operational, and political and socio-political aspects. And then to conclude this by definition of needs, case for change. And here also the stakeholder interaction have played an important role, combining all the different good work performed within work package 3. And finally, to develop a set of recommendations. There is a comprehensive report, business case report, to be published later. But I will just give an overview of the recommendations. Next slide, please. In total, 7 recommendations. The first one, and that's recommendations for further work, harmonization, alignment of definitions. Not at least when it comes to material and waste. Because today, what is material in one country is a waste in another country. And that is something that should be harmonized and aligned. But also to strive towards harmonization alignment of definitions for radioactive waste, hazardous waste, and not at least hazardous waste contaminated with radionuclides. Because today we're using the same expression, but it means different things, which is a hurdle when it comes to cross-border facilities and services. Another recommendation is to define European-wide and well-defined best available technology approaches to support the member states. Number 4 is to reduce the stock of legacy historical radioactive waste in Europe, because there is a lot. And one way to do that is to implement co-funded shared treatment facilities across borders. It could be co-funded in different ways, but there is a definite need. And number 5, identification and utilization of cross-border treatment, as well as knowledge sharing, specifically when it comes to radiologically contaminated hazardous waste, because that is an issue today. Next slide, please. We do also recommend the generation of a set of standard waste acceptance criteria when it comes to disposal, and also to have a set of standardized packages. It is waste of resources that each country should have its own standardized packages when we are a European Union. And also it will help member states by having a set of standard waste acceptance criteria, not one for all, but to have a good start. To ensure that investment in facilities and arrangements for share across border facilities and services should address technical needs, regulatory requirements, environmental protection, and not at least sustainability aspects, commercial and operational aspects, political and socio-political expectation. The last one is very important as well, which we will address later on during this training session. And details related to this will come in the presentation to follow. So this was a high-level summary of the business case. Thank you.
Helpful if I unmute, isn't it? Thank you, Anna. I think that's us for as a summary as to HARPERS and Work Package 3 for now. I will hand over to Karina to give her presentation on the approaches for management of hazardous waste. And these are our project partners, which I should have talked about before, but as you can see, there's some decent household names that are there. So I shall hand you over now. Thank you, Karina.